Boom. And we are live at the Pirate Broadcast. And I have a special guest that is a fellow wizard. And we have been going back and forth. And Andrew loves video as much as I do. And we're a couple of wizards back and forth. And so I wanted to introduce you to, if you don't know Andrew, you need to know Andrew, connect with Andrew, go grab a connection request with Andrew and get on board. We're both on LinkedIn. We're creating content and doing lots of good things, and we wanted to share them with you today. And a couple of quick tips, elements, things that you can use right now today. And Andrew, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am doing great. And just for all those people out there who don't know me, if you're in California or you visit California, hit me up. I am the guy that'll always make the time to go grab coffee with you. So I love taking the online connections on LinkedIn and making them real life connections. I've met Russ in real life as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about. It's really, I mean, if you think about, and this is what I tell my clients is LinkedIn is nothing more than a tool you can use to start a conversation. The conversation still needs to develop just like any other networking event or face-to-face or coffee or a random connection, and the reality is it's so easy to actually meet people in person, connect with them, and develop a relationship just like you and I.
Yeah.
And we've done business together, and we've had connections. We met in real life, and actually, I think the first time, I knew about you because you and Brian Schulman had met for coffee one day. And that's what brought you onto my radar. And then we connected, and here we are on the Pirate Broadcast.
Yeah. Well, and I think you really hit on it as far as, what's like the number one skill that if you master, you will be successful, and it's communication. Right. So
yeah.
the better you are at communicating, whether it's in a digital form or an in-person form, the better you are at that, the more success you're going to have, the more friends you're going to make, the more people who are going to come into your life who want to do business with you, the more easily you're going to be able to talk about what you do. Right. Like all of that stuff is all just tied back to communication. So it's like, just get out there and start having conversations. You'll start getting better at this stuff.
Well, and the other side of the same coin is, with video, it's much easier to pronounce and announce and share who you are on a regular basis very quickly. And a lot of people are shy of getting on camera. They're like not quite there. And what I recommend for people like that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is if you're shy about getting on camera, why not start a screen share and narrate over the top of it, and then share a couple of key points, very simple, and just say, hey, I want to meet with you. Here's a coffee. Here's a connection. Here's something that we can do together. Or I just want to learn more about what you're doing. And I think if you approach it with a curiosity rather than a scarcity mindset, you are always able to get further along down the road. Because if you're scarcity and you scare them away because you're asking for everything, all their money, and buy my stuff, that turns people off. And in this day and age, it's so easy to notice that activity, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to just be curious about what the person's doing and have a conversation and find out more about them. Because if I can help them do something, or if I can refer them to somebody that can help them, then I become a resource. It doesn't matter if I do business with them directly. If I can help them achieve their goals and stay top of mind with them, then it's a much easier conversation to have. What are your thoughts on that, Andrew, and how do you approach it?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I always tell people I is the most commonly used word in the English language. I don't know about the other languages, but I'm sure it's probably similar in their language as well, because it's a human thing to be concerned with yourself, right? Nothing is more important than the problems that you have, right? If there's an earthquake halfway across the world that you did not feel, that caused massive damage, millions, billions of trillions of dollars, if you prick your finger right now, you're going to be more concerned with that tiny little prick than you're going to be concerned about that earthquake that just happened, right?
Yeah, I hate paper cuts. I just hate paper cuts.
But like
the volcano has nothing on my paper cut, man.
Right. As long as it doesn't bother me, I'm good, right?
That's true. That's true.
The human psychology element here is that people are way more concerned with themselves than they are with you. So when you're getting in your head about being shy and nervous on camera, one, most people are not really thinking about you at the time, right? Like when they watch a video, you are making them think of things in their own life. And so they're immediately like all of their thoughts are still going back to themselves and where they are today. So if you want to reach out to somebody on video, make it about that person that you're talking to, right?
Yeah.
Don't send a video. I mean, this is going to like make you a little bit more shy if you send a video and you're just talking about yourself, right? That's kind of awkward. Like, hey, just so you know, this is me. I'm pretty cool. You should want to hang out with me, right? No, make it be like, hey, Russ, I was checking out your live podcast. You always have really handsome guys on there. This guy Andrew came on, and it just was amazing. And I love everything that you're talking about. I'd love to get coffee with you, right? Like flip it around, make it about them, and then your brain turns into a normal human brain because you're talking to somebody else rather than talking about yourself to nobody, right? Because that's what it can feel like when you're talking on the camera, that you're just talking to yourself, and that's awkward. If you make it about that person, you have to talk to them.
Even with the live broadcast like this, we're actually talking to the individual. One of the lessons I learned in broadcasting was that regardless if a million people are listening to you, you have to address the individual because you're talking to the individual in the camera, and you're talking about one of the things that you have to think about is the connection. And you can't connect. I mean, you can speak to an audience, but you can't connect to 10,000 people at one time.
Right.
So think about the individual and how they're feeling about what you're doing. And the other thing I want to mention is that there's a lot of people that are joining us, Andrew, and I just want to give a shout out to Jessica, Leslie Osborne. Hey, love to see you, Leslie. Jordan Thomas is out there again, and Angie. Hey, Angie. And love that you're here. Appreciate you, and thank you so much for being here. This is an amazing time in our life, Andrew, and it just blows my mind away that we can actually reach out. Mirnai, is it Mirnai from Dakar? It's international, and we have the opportunity. I have, just like you, friends all over the world as a result of this platform. So it's amazing that we can actually accomplish this goal and make progress and do things anywhere, anytime. It's like I'm traveling now. I'm in Houston. A month ago I was in Seattle, and I know you travel quite a bit. You go to different events, and the people we know are traveling around as well. So what are the biggest challenges that you have with just coaching students or people, your clients? How to walk through the process of how to get started and make it super simple. Because I just tell people to get on your phone and just pick up the phone and start doing it, and just practice makes perfect, right? But there is no perfect.
Yeah. So I do this all the time with clients too that are kind of at the very beginning stage, and they're wanting to jump off into the deep end, basically, right? And pay a lot of money basically to make video. And for me, I always say, hey, if you haven't really dived into that space, the first thing that you're going to want to do is get comfortable on your own, right? Yeah. It's definitely one of those places where, like, yes, if you're doing some high-end work and you have an event and you need to sell tickets to it, yes, for sure, hire people. But organically, when you are just building your audience, you should be you should be laying the foundation for that, right? Like, even if you look at Gary V, at some point in his life, he was making those on his own, right? He was just like going with his phone, whipping out his phone and just recording himself.
He started with wine library, and he says for the first 2 years, nobody was watching anything. It's like, he tells the story. It's like, hey, I had nobody watching me. And then then it started.
It takes time. I mean, I've been posting consistently now on LinkedIn for almost a year, and it's been a very slow drip of gaining traction. Where I'd say I probably started in January this year, like being very consistent and saying, okay, I'm going to post like every day-ish. And I think I started this year with maybe a little over 1,000 connections. And then just at the beginning of last week, so just a week ago, I was just hitting 3,000, right? So very slow drip to gain those followers. And then this last week, I gained 1,000 in 1 week, right? So like, I feel like it sneaks up on you. You got to put in, you have to lay in that groundwork. You have to figure out who you are. You got to find your voice. You got to figure out what your positioning is, what your messaging is. And sometimes it's not very clear, or sometimes it can change because the direction that you were going kind of changes, and what you thought you wanted to do is not what you wanted to do. So I feel like it's a process that you have to give yourself into. You can't just go into it going, hey, I'm going to try this for a week, and if it doesn't work, I'm out, right? Like it's not that type of thing that you do. It's very, you have to build it up. But once the momentum is rolling, it's very easy to keep it going, right? It's not something that you have to invest as much time as you did at the very beginning, and you get better and better at it. So you're investing less and less time as you go on in the process.
Well, I think the other side of that is that you become more efficient at what you're doing because you're comfortable with it. It's like any instrument, you know, artist or a musician or any kind of a creative process is like cooking. You know, prep work takes less time when you know the recipes. You know them like the back of your hand. And you know, Jill Sullivan and you know, all of the chefs out there know this, and it's like, okay, let's do a batching and let's put it together, and that's where your efficiencies come along. And I want to go back to one point that you mentioned that I think is key to individuals getting online and starting to shoot video is just know that the initial videos that you want, you'll look back and you say, oh man, that sucks so bad. And we all start at zero. Everyone starts at zero, and we all know that it's going to suck. And there's going to be a period of suck that is going to last as long as you take to get your efficiency and find your voice, because you have to produce enough copy, content, and creativity to understand what it is and get that feedback loop going. If it's all in your head and you're doing it all in your head, you'll never achieve your voice the way you need to achieve your voice to present, to be comfortable on camera, to actually produce the content and the creativity that you deserve. And that's what, you know, you have a gift, you have to share it out. And one of the things that I love about some of the videos that you've produced is that you almost tease out the conversation with people online, and it's, you know, it's that conversational aspect of it, and I love that, and I appreciate what you're doing online, and so thank you for being here. And I just want to extend the gratitude. If you're showing up live here, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And if you're watching this, hit reply, comment. If you want to ask Andrew anything, you know, ask questions. He can be found at feralflix, correct, .com.
That's right.
All right. And so, Andrew, I want to ask you about what has your biggest epiphany been as you've been growing your content, your creativity, and how did you get started in video, and how have you seen the evolution take place, and what surprised you along the way?
So let's start with biggest epiphany. So at the beginning of the year, when I talked about that journey where I basically said, hey, I'm going to record a video every day, and we're just going to see what happens. I legitimately was recording a video about anything and everything. Like, I had an idea. I'm going to make a burrito pickle sandwich. I'm recording a video, right? Like that was it. I was documenting my life. And what's interesting is that I think I gained a lot of really true fans when I started that process, because there was literally nothing behind my content. Sometimes when people post content and it's very clear that this content is meant to advertise what they do, or like they want to sell you something eventually. Like
Uh-huh.
my content wasn't that, right? Like I'm not selling you pickle burrito, right? and so I think I gained a lot of fans going through that process. But my epiphany was that, you know, I wasn't really getting any business from what I was doing. I was just getting friends, which is fine, right? Like it was great. I was growing an audience, and this audience was going to help me amplify what I do later on.
Yeah.
And my biggest epiphany was that the content that did really well, or the content that people really appreciated, was when I was adding some sort of value directly to them. So this is the part where, you know, people say, you know, like, should you give away things for free? How much should you give away for free? That kind of stuff. From my experience, I found that when I started taking all of that stuff that would have been conversations I had with clients, and
Uh-huh.
like strategy and techniques that I would have used to help them get results with their videos, and I put that information out there, people ate it up. And not only did people eat it up, the right people started to eat it up, and the right people started to reach out and ask me more. And I started to be seen as an expert in my space and not somebody who was just playing around. And so that was the epiphany for me, was
Yeah.
that I went from making, you know, these videos that were helping me find my voice, to making videos that are what I call empowerment videos, videos that empower people to do something, so that when somebody finishes that video, they go, what I want them to do is I want them to say, hey, I've got this, right? So if I make a video and I say, here's how to beat being shy on camera, I want somebody to watch it and go, hey, I can do that.
Yeah.
And so that was the switch for me. I started making more content that was aimed at others rather than that same thing. I went from inward reflection, like what's content that I would love to make, to what's content that other people would love to consume. And as soon as I made that flip, that was when it was like game over. Like now my content was
Yeah.
blowing up on its own.
And the other part of that is, and what I noticed is that by creating content, it goes back to the original point. By creating content that is completely random, and then understanding that, you know, and seeing what the data brings back, and finding out, okay, some of the right people are seeing it now, and I can do more of this content. And that goes back to the whole point of, you know, things are going to suck. You know, you create a random video about making coffee. It doesn't really matter. Anything, just to get content out there, just to be in the feed and be noticed. And if you do that, you'll start noticing trends, and then you can have a feedback loop around that. And I think that's really important for people to understand, because until you start producing, you don't have any kind of you don't know who's going to be watching. You don't know who's going to be attracted to your content or your personality. I mean, we could be doing the exact same thing, which we don't necessarily, but we do similar things, and we have an opportunity to attract certain people. And even if we did the exact same thing, our personalities would draw in a different audience.
Yeah, for sure.
So not good or bad. I mean, it's just like, it's not better or worse. It's just different. You know, it's like you gravitate towards certain people, and that's just the way it goes.
And that's a good reminder too, that, you know, you can still mix both of these types of content and have really good results, right? So if you love coffee, or here, I'll name drop Zach Messler, right?
Yeah, Zach's awesome.
Yeah, he has a thing with whiskey.
Bourbon.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's completely outside of what he normally does, but he's actually tied it into who he is and this thing that he's really passionate about. So he can make that content all day and intermix it in his other content, and it's going to get good results, especially because there's going to be people on LinkedIn who are also big fans of whiskey, and now they are tied to them. And this is where it's really interesting. If there are, like, you know, let's say there are 2-3 other people out there who does what Zach does, the person who likes whiskey is going to hire Zach every time, right?
Yeah, right.
Even if Zach isn't as good as one of those other people, because they like him more.
Well, and that's a brilliant point, Andrew, because if you have a common thread, say, you know, anything, fishing, golfing, sports, hunting, you know, cars, whatever it happens to be, that common thread allows you to have conversations outside of the business conversation, right?
Yeah.
And that helps build the grow, like, and trust. So, and that's why I think it's really important for people to understand that, hey, I don't need to do everything for everyone. I only need to do the best for some people, right? And you can develop some amazing relationships and grow your business by helping the right people do the right thing at the right time. And I think that's important for us to understand is, you know, we're gonna gravitate to certain people at certain times, and that's just the way it goes. And I don't know, we're connected randomly, and it's you know, with Zach, it's random. I love Zach, he's awesome. You know, Roger, you know, so many people I could go down the list, and I don't do a lot of tagging, and I have purposely not done that to see who organically arrives in my LinkedIn feed. So I've connected with some very diverse people. Bless you. And that's the kind of surprise I've found is what can you do when you you know, because with automation and tagging and getting on different lists and all of this other activity that you can add to enhance your lists, I think at times it dilutes your real audience. I don't know. And I think that's a theory, but I don't know. Do you have any strategy around that? Since you got 1,000 followers this week?
Well, this week was just a really good week, content wise. So, you know, I think because of my slow build, my audience is pretty genuine. As far as like, I don't get a lot of bots things. I do try different pod things every now and then, just to kind of like dip my toes in and see how that's going, if it's still working. I monitor other people that are in pods, their content, to see how well it's doing and the type of engagement that they get. But I mean, ultimately, when you're measuring the engagement on your content, it's looking at the comments and how meaningful those comments are and how many actually start a discussion, right? Because if it's just a single comment, and like a really good way to do this is if somebody comments and then you comment and you ask a question and you never get a response back, then it's probably like, you know, the engagement isn't quite there, because they're not willing to have a conversation on it. But the people who are, and this is easier for me to see because I see these people all the time in my content. But if somebody comments on my content and I ask them a question, they'll typically more often than not respond to me. And so like, that's for me a way that I can monitor like what's real and what's not real. But yeah, there's so much on LinkedIn that's going towards automation. Yeah. And rightfully so. I mean, some of the automations are super helpful. For example, I'm running an automation right now where I go out and I find people in a particular industry that I want to work in. I want to find some clients in. And so I have an automation that goes out and does two things. One, it visits profiles, and two, it connects with people who are in that industry. It does like up to, I think, like 100 a day. And it's finding people in that industry and then sending them a first message, right? That it's just kind of saying, hey, love to connect. I'm really interested in what you do. I'm looking to grow my network in this space, right? And then I am able to, once responses come in, actually start engaging with them on a more personal level. But what it does is it shows me who's interested in what I do and who actually wants to start that conversation.
Yeah, who's willing to start the conversation.
Yeah. Rather than like the old way of me doing that would have been very much headhunting and spending, you know, even if it's 5 minutes on each individual, learning more about them, but that's wasted time if that person has absolutely no interest in working with me or learning about what I do or building a relationship. And so what this automation does is kind of kicks it off and lets me know like who's interested, right? Yeah. Who could I start this conversation with? So there are things like that for me are really nice, but then there's some other things where, you know, like I could do that and somebody could have a bot set up on their page to automatically respond to connections, right? And so then essentially we get into this two robots are talking to each other and like people aren't even involved in it. That's what it's kind of
that might be a great skit though. Hey, my bot's better than your bot.
My bot's more realistic. So much more conversational than your bot.
Yeah. So Andrew, thank you so much for being here. I know there's a few more people that joined in the conversation, and I just want to, Kevin, thank you so much for being here. Jordan, it's awesome. Jessica, and it sounds like Leslie may have had her own epiphany. So I know that the interaction with LinkedIn comments are a little bit challenging at times because I have a hard time multitasking. Purvi, you're there. I love you, everyone. And thank you so much, Maureen. Thank you so much for being here. I know, Andrew, we're going to wrap up this show, and I just appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to our next connection and opportunity to share some great advice and tips with the LinkedIn audience. So kindness is cool, smiles are free, and you enjoy the day.
Take care.
Take care.